Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Martha Wolf Show. Today, we're going to talk about the persistent misunderstandings and misrepresentations um, in linguistics, around IQ, around education. This is touching on a range of topics. It's really fun. I'm really excited and kind of seeing these. There seems to be just the same kind of flaws and mistakes in thinking that creep into all these topics. And it really touches on so many things that are important in our society that we're really getting wrong. Like, we're getting severely wrong. We need to fix it, and we need to start not letting people just get away with saying things that are not empirical, they're nonsense, and that are misguiding society's efforts um, and emphasis and funding away from things that could make a difference and things that will not make a difference. So I stumbled across this post. Let me have a look. About Christophe Clave, and it says, thanks to Christophe Clave for his insights into the impoverishment of language and the ruin of thought. Now, I should say that a lot of this discourse is very appealing to a conservative right-leaning crowd, and it's something I've again and again come across within a conservative right-leaning traditionalist sort of crowd. I think it's really important that we're a little bit more rigorous and that we think about what we're saying and if it's empirical or not. So let's go through. I'm just going to criticize it wherever there's a flaw, and there's going to be a lot. And then I found an article very similar to this, similar, probably much worse flaws, much more obvious ones. Parole d'auteur says, the gradual disappearance of tenses, subjunctive, simple past, imperfect, compound future forms, and past participle, leads to a thought process anchored in the present, confined to the instant, incapable of projecting into time. So that sounds so poetic, right? So that sounds so profound. It's like, wow, big words I don't know. And like, yeah, like if you have more simple grammar, like that means you can't think, right? So it, on the surface, it can make sense. But there's always this assumption, false assumption that's never even like said like, oh, it's kind of an assumption, but hey, if this assumption is true, then perhaps, but that's never stated. It's the assumption that language brings about thought, not that thought brings about language. That language is the only way to express things, and if you're lacking language, you can't express them. But really, people over and over and over again find a way to express a huge variety of thoughts. Think of Creoles, think of Pidgins. When two languages meet, two cultures meet, they don't understand each other. They borrow words from each other and create a whole nother language that is basically those two languages mashed together with very simplistic grammar in order to communicate. And then when children are raised with the Pidgin, which is really a second language to the speakers of the Pidgin, they start speaking it as a first language, as a native language, and they start adding grammatical complexity back into it. So the human brain will find a way. Same with deaf people. Deaf people, you put them together, what do they start to do? Or you put a deaf child with a mother, the mother's desperate to communicate to it, they start developing sign language. And sign languages will develop over and over again all across the world, wherever there's deaf people that need to communicate with each other or with someone who's not deaf themselves. Of course, if you're not, if a sign language is your second language, you might never become fluent at it. But if you're raised and you cannot hear, you cannot learn to speak, you will speak a sign language as your first language, and it will develop a complex grammar just like any other language. So we know it will develop over and over again. The idea that there is a gradual disappearance of tenses. I don't think that's really what's happening. I think people, I mean, once again, this is not even, there's no reference here, but perhaps there's less subjunctive being used, perhaps simple past. What are you talking about? Everyone uses simple past all the time. This is so silly. Like, he's just, the author of this is really kind of hoping that no one's going to understand what he's saying, and it's really, really sad. You know, this is actually the poverty. This is the poverty. Writing something like this thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to use big words, no one's going to understand, I'm going to sound really smart. That's actually sad. That's the rot of our culture. You think people aren't using simple past? Hey, how was school yesterday? Yeah, like, we went to the sports field and we kicked the ball around. Like, that's all simple past. What are you talking about? A past participle? Like, gone? Oh, we had gone. I think there are shifts where certain forms of past are more used, and it can be a shift of dialect, and that can change over time as well. So, for example, in Catalan, which is like the Spanish that you learn if you learn Spanish as a foreign language, you learn like the mainstream, the dominant dialect, which is Catalan, and it uses different forms of past. And if you go to the north of Spain, which I went there, and I was like, wait, what? And they're using a different form of past. It's not that I never heard of it, it's just that's all they used all the time. And the same with German. So obviously you would learn High German if you learned a foreign language. If you looked it up, if you Google Translate something, it would all be High German. But in the south of Germany, so like Austria, Bavaria, those parts of Germany, so German has the equivalent of a simple past. So for example, if you say, yesterday I ran, I swam. So run becomes ran, swim becomes swam. That's just your simple past. And in German it's the same thing. So schwimm, schwamm, which almost sounds like swim, swam. Like that is just a language that is connected. Like it comes from the same origin. You can just tell. Rennen, rannte. So that's your simple past, but and I even have to, you can see me hesitating a little bit because I'm trying to make sure I'm telling you the right past tense, because the much more frequent form of past tense includes a past participle. And in German, it would sound ridiculous in English, but in German you would say, yesterday I have gone to the sports field and I have kicked a ball around, and then I have seen my friend, and then my friend had told me that actually, you know, and I saw that my friend had been wearing red boots. Like, it's ridiculous. But that's the normal conversational form of past tense that you're using in all your conversations in most parts of Germany and most forms of German that I've ever heard. If you started using simple past, it would be very, very odd. Very odd. You could be understood. It would be very odd. It would sound very like poetic or literary, like something you see in different dialects. Essentially, different dialects that you would see more in a written form, maybe in a more archaic form. And so, of course, in English, there's going to be the same sort of thing. People are going to converge on using the same kind of past tense and not be mixing it up too much. And it is definitely something I've noticed that you will learn about these different forms of past tense, and you will rarely ever hear them. You will rarely ever, ever, ever hear an English speaker say, before I went to the shops, I had gone to the library. That's technically, if you learn English, what it's supposed to be. But it's just not used. In fact, I can't think I've ever heard someone speak like that. I would love to. It's great. But people just don't speak like that. They just converge. And like, you want to use less mental energy, right? So it makes sense to not complicate things. I went to the library, then I went to the shops. I went to the shops and I went to the library, not I had done this before I did this, which is like a pre-past. Like, you're talking about the past and then you're mentioning a moment before the past. So from the reference point of the past, there's like another past. So anyway, it all sounds a lot more complicated when you use these terms, which this author is assuming you don't understand. Compound future form. Okay, all this is the same sort of stuff. The idea that something is happening to the language, like the language is kind of like the existing in the air. It's almost like something you involuntarily like breathe in and out. And then, oh, the language is more simplified. So therefore now you have more simplistic thought that's more anchored in the present. So basically, you have a more lower Q infantile way of processing your thoughts. Like, rather than saying people becoming less intelligent is going to lead to perhaps a simplification in language in some way, shape, or form. Now, that would actually make sense. Because, of course, if you're not modeling the far future, which you wouldn't if you have a low IQ, because the lower your IQ is, the less you're going to model far into the future. And like teenagers, even who are not even that low IQ, like they are just known to not think far into the future. It's just they don't have the information, they don't have the cognitive resources, perhaps also their temperament, perhaps almost it could be a mix of things, but they don't model very far into the future. The more intelligent you are, the more you're going to model it into the future, your life. That's just, there's a huge variation between people. There are people who are going to think maybe 3 months ahead on a good day. And there are people who are going to think 30 years. And we all know what sort of person we're talking about. We all know that person who's saving and doing this and investing and, you know, being really careful. You think, oh, I have to live your life a little bit, have a little bit of fun, you know, but they're thinking ahead all the time and sacrificing constantly for gains in the future. And there are people, really, really, really intelligent people who are going to think 300 years ahead, and that's beyond most people. You're telling me it's the complexity of the language they're hearing every day. Okay. The widespread use of the informal to form, the disappearance of capital letters and punctuation are all lethal blows to the subtlety of expression. Well, so using more informal forms, like not saying sir and miss, or like Mrs. Or that's kind of the equivalent in English here. In German, also we also have like more formal forms of an address and less formal forms of address. I think it's more. I don't really think it's not that there's less subtlety to the expression. It's what people are trying to express is different. There's more Americanized and perhaps Anglophone culture has become a little more common. There's a bit more casual relationships between people. The respect in society is actually decreased. There's maybe less authoritarianism in like institutions like schools and unis and colleges and things like that. That's what's happening. So actually they are expressing subtly what they want to express by saying tu or do, or calling your professor like Brian instead of Mr. Smith or Dr. Smith. You know, and there's a shift in culture to being more egalitarian, but you could say the same about dress. You could say the same about, oh, well, people are just wearing, you know, jeans and t-shirts, even like hyper educated people, even like the professors are coming to uni just wearing that. Okay. You could say the same thing, but it's that a subtlety of expression. Well, no, they are using subtlety of expression to express something, which is, let's be a little bit relaxed. Maybe there's other forms of, maybe having a really nice phone or having a nice house or living in a nice suburb is a much more important way to express status in this day and age than wearing nice clothes. It's just probably not so important anymore. What signal status is going to change over time? Like me using 5 meters of fabric to make a really, really, really elaborate, massive skirt and then walking around town with it and like bumping into people. That used to be like, oh, I would have been like, whoa, that lady has money. That's nuts. She can afford to buy 5 meters of fabric. And look at her skirt. Like, it's got so many pleats and flowers on it. Like, it's laughable. Like, and people would have complained about the disappearance of that. The skirts would have gone from very big to being much more slender and much more fitted. And there would have been people who would have said that as well. Would be saying, oh, well, it's so grotesque. Oh, there's such a lack of decor and decency and that. Well, that, yeah, but that's not. As soon as fabric's not expensive, it's no longer a status signal, so it loses its value. Why would you drag it around with yourself? To express what? People are always climbing something, some sort of ladder of respect. Capital letters and punctuation, we're just talking about like written for like texting and posting, like people are just a bit more relaxed. It's not such a fancy form of expression. It's just like everyday conversation. Like, the farmer on the field 200 years ago would have yelled something, hey, come over here, look at this. You know, I found a snake, or can you help me fix the tractor? Like, do you think he was fancy and subtle and like hyper eloquent? Like, no, but now there's no farmer in the field yelling out. You just have random people posting all over the internet. That's what it is. It's just people's everyday casual remarks and jokes and conversations. just because everyone now is online and writing things, it's like, we're no longer, you're not writing a love letter once a year to someone while you're in war or something like that, where you would put extra effort into spelling everything nicely and having proper writing, and also being able to write really well might have expressed, hey, I'm educated, therefore I'm very special back then, back in the days. And nowadays, well, it doesn't mean much. Because once you have autocorrect and everything, well, what does it say about you if you write with proper punctuation? It doesn't really say much about you. It's not a signal of anything. So once again, it's not a signal of status, so it gets dropped. It's kind of like just spewing lots of detailed information online is going to stop being a status signal. Like being able to write really fancy essays about a variety of topics, it's going to stop being a status signal because it's just going to be AI. So what are you signaling? You typed it into AI and AI spat it out. Oh, great. The world is changing constantly, Eliminating the word mademoiselle is not only a renunciation of the aesthetic charm of a word. What does that even mean? There's an aesthetic charm to the word mademoiselle. So in this person's mind, when he hears mademoiselle, so like a young woman, he's like, oh yes, that is such an aesthetically pleasing word. Like, it's not the word, it's the association in your mind. Like for me personally, it would have to be like box of chocolates. I'd be like, oh yes, box of chocolates, yum, chocolates. Mademoiselle does nothing to me. You're telling me it's an aesthetically pleasing word? Are you kidding me? But also a promotion of the idea that there is nothing between a little girl and a woman. Yeah, but I think that's what it is. There's changes in social norms and how society views things, and that's obviously not limited to the French speaking world. It's in the German speaking and English speaking world as well. You do in Australia, you still say Miss and Mrs, and it's only really in schools because it's such a static, authoritarian environment. Like there's not much change, there's not much social change kind of within the school system. Outside of that, it's not really something you hear. And in German, it's the same thing. You had obviously Mädchen is girl, and then Fräulein is mademoiselle, and then Frau is woman. And you address a married woman, Frau, whatever. Frau, and then the name. And then Fräulein, and then it would be, I guess, the unmarried surname. And that makes a lot of sense in a culture where, there is just a massive shift from being unmarried to being married. Your life completely changes, your living dynamics, you are now tied to a man, you're tied into his business, you are part of his family, you are bearing children, it's a massive thing. And marriage, this is not about the words and the language, but this is about a society where we have a complete breakdown of marriage and the norms around marriage and what marriage means, and what, not just like the wedding, but like the whole marriage. What even is it? Is it an enterprise where men and women do something together? Not really. Or people do it anyway. People move in together and play house without being married. So of course those words are going to be dropped because the meaning doesn't apply to our society anymore. You can totally complain about that, but don't make it a linguistic complaint, is what I'm saying. It's not a linguistic problem. If you think it's a problem, then make a societal argument for how we should return to marriage, which would involve, that's a whole different conversation. That's going to involve, premarital sex perhaps, or shaming children that are born out of wedlock. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that people probably don't really want to face or talk about because it's very uncomfortable. Revoking no-fault divorce, making divorce extremely difficult. Family courts. That's a whole different conversation. That's a lot less comfortable than just saying, oh, the word is nice. Fewer words and fewer conjugated verbs. I don't know what he means by that. Verbs that are used in spoken language or in written language are always conjugated. Most of the time anyway. Unless you use a verb like will, like I will go. Or I want to go. I would like to see. But then the would is still conjugated and the to see is not conjugated. So once again, what are we saying here? Maybe this is French specific and maybe this refers to like younger people and how they use language differently. Anyway, fewer words and fewer conjugated verbs means fewer capacities to express emotions and fewer possibilities to elaborate thought. Well, okay, but if there was thought to elaborate, you would find the words to do that, which is why you constantly have new words coming in and old words coming out of language. I'm not saying that the vocab of each language is the same or stays the same. I'm not saying that. Is he saying that French now has fewer and fewer words? Well, it's probably an indication, or like actually used words, not talking about the dictionary, probably an indication that the IQ of the population is going down, or that people are less literate. They're using less words in a literary context, perhaps something like that. But once again, they're not going into that. It's not that you can't elaborate your thoughts. You will find a way. If you're thinking something and you want to know, you want to express it, you will find the word. Trust me. It's people don't have the elaborate thoughts to express. That's the problem. Studies have shown that a portion of the violence in public and private spheres stems directly from the inability to put words to emotions. Have studies really shown that? But could that be something like taboos, like some things that you feel like you can't talk about? Is it the inability to say the words, really? You think you're unable to say, oh, I have a tribal conflict with this group. I hate their like ethnic group. Now I'm going to have like random street violence against them. Really? You think people can't express that? I'm pretty sure they can express that quite elaborately. But perhaps they feel like they cannot for legal reasons express that. Or maybe they're suppressing their own speech. How much of this is a problem of a lack of free speech? Without words to construct reasoning, the complex thought so dear to Edgar Morin is rendered impossible. It's not that people lack words. If they're not using them, it's because they have no need to use them, because they don't have the complex thought that underlie the necessity to even use those words. Okay? Once again, it's always twisted. It's always the wrong way around. And you'll see this continuously throughout the critiques that I'm making of these two people that are in the title. The poorer the language, the less thought exists. Exactly the opposite way around. The less thought exists, the poorer the language is going to be, right? And even then, that's not even that true. Because linguistic ability, like how fluently you speak a language and how well you speak a language and the grammar of your language, is not that correlated to IQ, which is going to be about what kind of thoughts you're thinking, right? You can be quite low IQ and have very good command of language. In fact, you can speak multiple languages. You can speak languages with very complicated grammar that like you would have to spend 10 years of your adult life to try to study and try to learn. Like very difficult. So it's just silly. It's just silly. History is rich with examples and writings abound, from George Orwell in 1984 to Ray Bradbury's in Fahrenheit 451, that recount how dictatorships of all stripes obstructed thought by reducing and twisting the number and meaning of words. Now that's where I'm going to that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Is this a problem of not like being able to express your complex thought because you lack the language, or you're not allowed to speak because we have a lack of free speech in places like Australia, in places like France, Germany, all around? It's rare to find an example where there is free speech, or England, obviously, Britain, obviously, terrible. So that's where I would agree, but this is a twisted and obscured way of expressing that. There's no critical thought without thought. There's no thought without words. Untrue. That sentence here is untrue. But for some people, they are very verbal in their thinking and they cannot really separate their thoughts and feelings. They just come out as words, as sentences, as paragraphs, as ruminations of that sort. And I think some people's brains, for some people, that will feel, they will just read them and be like, absolutely, that will feel completely true to them. But other people, like me, have thoughts that are very much not verbal. Like thinking of feelings. And I find this bizarre that I have to say this because you think everyone experiences that, but apparently not. Feelings, imagining scenarios, imagining objects, trying to measure something in your mind or think, well, how's that going to fit? If I buy this thing, is that going to fit there? If I buy these planks of wood, can I connect them in a way that they're going to make this shape, right? Three-dimensional thinking, spatial thinking. You're telling me if you're driving the car and you're like looking and, you know, you're constantly thinking ahead and thinking how to twist the wheel. You're obviously thinking because you're twisting the wheel right to not veer off the road and off the cliff. You're telling me those are verbal thoughts and those require words. Like you're thinking, oh, I'd better twist the wheel 1 centimeter to the right now because otherwise I'm gonna, you know, scratch on the side of the road. Like you're not thinking, really, like you're telling me everyone thinks that in words. I very much doubt that that's actually the normal human experience at all. I think most of your thoughts are not going to be verbal. If you're thinking of conversations with people or something someone said to you or a story that you were told, and perhaps it's more in words. But you telling me you can think of a story, like you can think of, I don't know, Cinderella without thinking of some sort of picture or image. Like you can think of Cinderella without thinking of the dress and the shoes and stuff like that. That I find it very bizarre. Of course there are thoughts without words. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. How can one build hypothetical deductive thoughts? So once again, I think this is just trying to use big words to sound intimidating, and it's not, doesn't mean much. There's not much in here actually. Without mastery of the conditional. It's a really good question though. Conditional. Okay, let's talk about it. It's really, really not complicated. The conditional is the thing where like people were laughing. It's like a meme. People were laughing about it. They're like, you go around, there's this, people who go around with like microphone and they interview people and they're like, how would you feel if you hadn't had breakfast? And then the person's like, oh, what do you mean? What? And like, yeah, how would you feel if you hadn't had breakfast? And of course, most people are going to say, oh, if I hadn't had breakfast today, I guess I would be really hungry. I mean, that's the obvious answer, right? If I hadn't had breakfast, I would have had extra lunch to make up for it. Or something like that. Something, you know, that's a hypothetical. The hypothetical question and answer, and obviously it uses slightly different grammar, and that's what this is referring to. But what's, and it is sort of, you can see how people might think, well, some people just can't use those terms. They don't know how to use the grammatical structure, and so you might think, oh, now or no, they don't know how to use that grammatical structure. They need to be taught because otherwise they can't think hypothetically. But it's not that. It's that some people's brains just are not able to entertain a hypothetical. It's quite difficult to. It's quite a cognitive feat, which is really hard for intelligent people to understand. How difficult that actually is for some people to go between reality and hypothetical. And it's actually a very common thing. If you just talk to people with open mind about a bunch of different topics, you'll notice that some people speak, they're not using the hypothetical, they're not using the conditional to talk about hypothetical. They're just using normal tenses, present tense, future tense, to talk about hypothetical. For example, if you talk to leftists, I'm totally not saying it's only leftists, totally not, but it is a thing that you hear. They'll be like, well, but men and women are equal, therefore blah blah blah. It's important to do this and implement this and put women into different positions and maybe promote women. It's like, so you're saying that they're not equal? No, they're equal. It's like, well, how can you equalize them more if they're already equal? And that's where they just short circuit. Obviously, there are intelligent leftists for sure. I'm not saying you can't promote those ideas in an intelligent way, but the way that people who are ideologically strong on anything will often talk like that. They will talk about as if their hypothetical ideal reality is already real. And they're not using the conditional. They're just saying it like that. And then other people, so it's hard to know. It's not like these people can't use it. It takes a lot more mental effort. The point I'm trying to make is it takes a lot more mental effort than people realize to actually skip consciously between those modes of thinking, because you have to be conscious that something's hypothetical, to be like, okay, this is hypothetical, it's not real. So I'm going to say, if I had a cat, then I guess there would be cat hair all over my house, right? But I believe a lot of people are not even able to really consciously realize something is hypothetical, then use the conditional to express that. I think that's already beyond the cognitive abilities of a huge chunk of the population. And it's like that if you hadn't had breakfast this morning, how would you feel question. And a lot of people just cannot answer it. They go, but I had breakfast. Yeah, but what if you didn't? But I did have breakfast. So they cannot understand it. And this is the problem, is cognitive processing. How can one envision the future without future tense conjugation? Because my toddler knows a handful of words, a bunch of words, no sentences, no grammar, no conjugation, no verbs, none of that, none of it. And yet, if another toddler walks straight up to my toddler is gonna anticipate what's gonna happen and be like, or I actually brought a bunch of things to illustrate linguistic concepts that I may or may not use, but I have some toys. I'm toddler with the toy. No. If I say, can I have that please? Can you give me the spoon please? So the toddler that has extremely limited language can anticipate the future, of course, just like an animal can. What are you even talking about? The dog can do a better job than that. The dog will know, you're putting your shoes on. Oh my goodness, you're putting your shoes on. I'm so excited. We're going to go for a walk. The dog can't speak. What are you talking about? They can't anticipate the future. How do you think animals build nests? Like the bird's building a complex nest. It has to sit and study human language first. You can't almost. And this is illustrating exactly what I'm saying the problem is. The authors here are demonstrating exactly what's the problem. It's a lack of intelligence. It's a lack of being able to think at all. That's why people are not using complex grammatical structures and lots of varied vocabulary. There's no necessity for it because there's no thoughts to express. Just like these authors, they're using big fancy words and complex structures, but they're not even considering what they're saying. How idiotic. It's unbelievable, really. How can one grasp temporality? It's just a fancy way of saying, how can you understand time? A succession of elements in time, which once again, pretty sure you can do this with an object. Oh, here's my object. And before you even throw it, and your dog is going to be anticipating exactly where that thing's going to fly, and your dog's going to run, it's going to position itself, and then you throw it and the dog's going to adjust itself and it's going to look up and it's going to, how complex is that? That is complex. You're telling me the dog needs language to do that? It needs to be sitting in school. Like, sit still and be educated. Oh my goodness. Whether to pass or to come, and the relative duration without a language that distinguishes between what could have been, what was, what is, what might come to pass, and what will be after what might come to pass has occurred. Well, also, where's this coming from that people can't express any of this stuff? Even if you're just assuming, where's this assumption coming from that people cannot express themselves at all? You're talking about like foreigners who have limited ability to speak French. The French are hung up on language in a way that is unhealthy, let me say, and this is well known. The French and language, something is broken there. Something is so broken. Obviously, there are brilliant and wonderful French people who are totally not like this. But there is this idea that there's a right way and a right dialect and everyone has to speak a certain way and we need to homogenize. They homogenize the French language. They try to stamp out the French dialects and they have this, if you speak to a French person, excuse me, where's the bathroom? They nearly spit at you. They will spit at your feet. How dare you speak to me in this disgusting language? There's a problem. There's something going on with the French and their language. And it's removed from reality. But of course you can have national pride. That's great. Of course you can just only want to speak to French people. That's fine. You can only marry each other and have babies with each other and defend your territory. That's fine. I'm not against nationalism, but thinking that actually, like, literally your words and sentences and structures and like everything needs to stay exactly one way and everyone has to speak like that because that's superior, it's ridiculous. If a rallying cry needed to be heard today, it would be this one, addressed to parents and teachers. Make your children, your students, your pupils speak, read, and write. I mean, that I would agree with, because that's basic. That's what a school's supposed to do. Yes, speak, read, and write, of course. Teach and practice the language in its most varied forms, even if it seems complicated, even if it is complicated, because in that effort lies freedom. Now, that I disagree with. It's nothing to do with freedom. Those who endlessly explain that spelling must be simplified, that the language must be purged of its flaws. To be fair, French spelling probably needs to be completely revised. I mean, what is going on? The silent letters, like most of the words just silent. It's like, but it's like 5 letters. Like French spelling is just like, it's a language you learn just like as a mental exercise. Like it's just working out because it makes no sense. Of course, historically it made some sense. So if you get Germanic people to speak a Latin language, that's what happens. It's not good. It's not. It doesn't mix. The language must be purged of its flaws. That genders, tenses, and nuances must be abolished. Okay, well, I mean that obviously is a push with the whole genders. Obviously, French has the le and la or whatever, like the male and female, and German has 3 different genders, which they probably prefer. I mean, really, German is really like more progressive and in line with the current ideology, isn't it? There's a neuter. You can just call a lot of things neuter, maybe. I'm just joking, of course. But seriously, it does. Tenses and nuances must be abolished. That all that creates complexity. And the grave diggers of the human spirit. There's no freedom without demands. There's no beauty without the thought of beauty. Christophe Clave. Yeah, so it's just silly. And then I looked something up and I found something really similar, and it's probably even more, like, it's not even really trying to sound as smart. At least this stuff here, this Christophe Clave stuff, is trying to sound smart. This stuff, this other thing here by Kathleen J. Ruby falls short really of even that. It's more like pop science and it's fun. So let's go through that. Go away. Let's go through that as well. So I'm going to start reading that. Exploring the relationship between IQ and language skills unveils significant insights into cognitive development. She fails to unveil any significant insights, but spoiler, she fails to unveil any significant insights here, but it's cool, you know. It sounds good. It's always like, oh, how do I start the article in a way that sounds good? This in-depth analysis seeks to understand. It's not in-depth, by the way. The analysis is not. I've read the whole thing. It's not in-depth. It's like very surface. Really, there's really no detail at all. Um, there's sort of vague, sound good hypotheses and misleading statements. Seeks to understand how these two facets of intelligence interact and influence each other across different stages of life and societal contexts. Okay, so here she's calling IQ and language skills two facets of intelligence that interact and influence each other. Well, yes, I think for the most part, that's yes, but what she means by that, it would be quite different if you have a more hereditary understanding of intelligence. You would read that quite differently than what she's trying to say here. She's basically saying that like you can put language into a child and basically implant this aspect of intelligence, which just doesn't really seem to be true. But it's probably more true for language than for other aspects of intelligence. Like you can probably influence someone's language development much, much more. And obviously it does have to be externally, it requires substantial external input to learn language. So it is one of those things that is kind of confusing because it does feel like something that you've just learned from and is purely from external input. And you think that, let's say, two identical twins, or not even identical twins, just two little children raised in the same environment would acquire language in the same way. But of course, that's not the case because your intelligence is going to influence how you respond to the input of language. Cognitive foundations of language skills. IQ, a measure of cognitive abilities, encompasses various functions, including problem solving, correct, logical reasoning, correct, and abstract thinking, awesome, all of which are crucial for language acquisition and proficiency. Now this, we're like so good, veering completely off the road. Problem solving is important for language acquisition. No, it's not actually. You're not solving problems when you're doing language, when you're talking. Because a lot of, like I was saying with French spelling, like it's not arbitrary, of course, it's for historical reasons, but there's just so many random silent letters. Same with English. It's not logical at all. You're not solving a problem. Oh, how do I spell this word? Oh yeah, there's a logical way to come. No, you're just brute learning it. A lot of things have to be learned in quite a brute way. And if it's a language that is like an Aboriginal language, let's say, where the way it's written is like extremely phonetic, like literally you're just writing every sound that you say. So, for example, I did bring some objects to help me like, so this is my kid's shell. So this shell, you would put, there wouldn't be SH, it would be a symbol that represents the sound sh, and then a symbol that represents and then a symbol that represents l. It's 3 symbols. Sh, l, shell. That would be a very phonetic way of spelling. And there are languages that are spelled like that. They usually don't have much history, so there's not much change of language over time, so that the spelling still matches the way that the language is spoken. Whereas, obviously in English, sh is represented by 2 letters, which is already, we're not really doing a phonetic spelling here. And then the letter E can have many different sounds, and then the L is a double L. So it's already completely off, and that's a very, very, very basic word. So it's not problem solving that gets you there, it's just brute learning. And remembering, and maybe like a visual memory or something like that. Logical reasoning. She's saying logical reasoning is crucial for language acquisition and proficiency. No, it's not. It's really, really actually not. Like, we're getting this very wrong. Logical reasoning, like, oh, if I swing a pendulum at a certain speed and then I snap it. How far's the ball gonna fly? Like, logical reasoning. What has it got to do with language? It's not logical. You're just repeating the same structures over and over, the same grammatical structures, and inserting different words. It's really nothing to do with logical reasoning. Which, once again, these things are not linked. And you might say, well, you're just making that up. But it's like, that would explain why IQ is not very linked to language ability. You have people all around the world speaking really quick, fluent, grammatically complex languages, and their IQ and cognition is very different. Learning a language, speaking a language fluently, natively, with perfect grammar, it's not very linked to IQ. Of course, if you really, really, really damage someone's brain, like you actually have brain damage, or you have something's hemorrhaged, or you've gotten a blow to your head, there are parts of the brain that will process language. If they're damaged, yeah, you're not going to be able to speak. But you could, that's the thing, if you get a certain brain damage in a language area of your brain, like the Broca's area or the Wernicke's area, you could still be really smart and think, but just not be able to speak. Or you could be perfectly fine mentally, but just not be able to read or understand people anymore, just because certain parts of the brain are off. And abstract thinking, once again, abstract thinking, perhaps, maybe a little bit, because obviously there is an abstraction between the word and the thing it represents, which is why I brought these objects. We've got the shell again. This is the object. This is my plastic shell. This is, it's made of plastic and it's got this shape. Then there is the word, or the two words, plastic shell, that describe it. That's an abstraction. I can say to you, my kid has a plastic shell, and it's a reference that's detached and it's abstracted from the actual object. So it probably does require a degree of abstract thinking. But it seems to be something that all human beings are quite capable of, even if they have quite low intelligence and a limited abstract thinking in other ways. I don't know how that works. I don't know why that is. It seems to me like it's abstract thinking to be able to talk about things without them being present, without them being there. Although young children will also fail at that. But then not be able to, rotate an object in your mind, or get like patterns are going to repeat and things like that, like basic kind of IQ test things. There are people who are going to fail that, but they'll be fluent. So I don't know. All of which are crucial for language proficiency. Okay, pretty much untrue, as I've just shown. Higher IQ often correlates with an enhanced ability to manipulate language. Does it really? Or is it just you've got more vocab? And maybe you're using longer sentences because you can actually keep track in your mind. Okay, I said this and I said that, then I said that. And then, oh yeah, it's going to conclude in this. But that's just, once again, are we able to manipulate language more? Is that manipulating language? What does that even mean, manipulate language? What, you're twisting the grammar in some way? You're squeezing the juice out? Like, what? You're just using grammatical structures, and then maybe you're embedding more clauses. Maybe because if you're smarter, you're able to keep track of a larger string of information, and you're able to embed more clauses. But those clauses are still going to have like really basic grammar. Like I could say, and I brought objects just for this sort of thing where I'm trying to come up with examples and not like just pick like things that are around me otherwise. But if I said, I went to the shops to buy some milk, blah, blah, and then this happened and this, but because my grandma had told me to 3 weeks ago when I saw her last, this sort of thing, like you're just sort of embedding and extending and adding more clauses, but the clauses themselves still have simple structure. Understand complex grammatical structures, like yes, I guess to some extent. Once again, we're talking about but is it understanding the grammatical structure, or is it understanding the thoughts that someone's trying to express? Like if someone with 120 IQ is expressing a question or a thought to you, Is it that, oh, I don't understand the grammatical structure, or is it I don't understand the content of what you're saying? That's where I think that this is misleading. I just think it's misleading. I think, but yeah, the whole, if you hadn't had breakfast, that just still throws me off. I still can't quite believe that. But the whole, if you hadn't had breakfast today, how would you feel? And that the fact that that throws people off and they can't answer that question makes me think, well, yeah, maybe they can't understand complex grammatical structures. But I don't really think it's that. I don't think it's the grammatical structure itself. I think it's the idea that something could be a different way, and then entertaining that idea and trying to imagine a scenario where the current scenario is not and a different scenario is. That's what people are unable to process, I think. I don't think it's the language itself, but that would have to be tested in some way, shape, or form. Maybe one would have to be like a linguistic test, like asking a question, and then one could be like an image. And then they'd have to do it in a non-verbal way. We'd have to come up with something like that. That would be really interesting. And quickly acquire new languages. Once again, I'm just not... People who can acquire new languages are going to have like a high verbal ability, like a high linguistic ability. I'm not saying that there's no variation in that. There are people who are extraordinary, but most people are pretty good. Most people around the world are going to be pretty good with language. Some people are just extraordinary. This relationship, and look, and there are really smart people who can't acquire new languages easily. It's once again, it's a part of intelligence that's not really linked to underlying intelligence, like what they call G. This relationship highlights the cognitive underpinnings that facilitate linguistic abilities. Okay, not completely untrue, right? But not that simple either. Neurological aspects of IQ and language. The brain regions involved in higher cognitive processes, such as the prefrontal cortex and the Broca's area. See, I can't even get through a half a sentence without like deeply disagreeing with what she's saying here. The prefrontal cortex involves higher cognitive processes? I guess. How would you define that? Higher cognitive process. What does that even mean? Why is it doing this? Don't copy paste something random. Anyway, I'm just gonna have to wing this, but having good prefrontal cortex function is not going to be related to IQ very, very strongly. It could be an indication of just general good health and like good cognitive function generally speaking, but like particularly high IQ is not necessarily going to involve someone having good prefrontal cortex functions. In fact, those two things often don't align, which gives you the whole stereotype of, oh, the professor who's like all over the place and can't even like do a basic task, but is really, really brilliant at a certain thing. Like there are people like that, lots of people like that who are just really brilliant at certain things that require high IQ, but they're not going to have like good prefrontal cortex function. Give me a second. Prefrontal. So frustrating. She's just writing this stuff. Where's it coming from? The prefrontal cortex region is responsible for processing and adapting one's thinking in order to meet certain goals in different situations. These processes of thinking can include the brain allowing one to focus, control how they behave, and make different decisions. It includes the Broca's area, which is involved in speech formation, gaze, frontal eye fields, working memory, and risk processing. Let me tell you, the basic activity of this brain region is considered to be the orchestration of thoughts and actions in accordance with internal goals. Many authors have indicated an integral link between a person's will to live, personality, and the functions of the prefrontal cortex. It's to do with executive functioning. It's going to have to do with things like ADHD and autism, right? Planning, decision-making, working memory, personality expression, moderating social behavior, and controlling certain aspects of speech and language. Let me tell you something. Very intelligent people, they're not going to have good prefrontal cortex function, okay? Smart people, yes. Clever people, yes. Midwits, yes. Perhaps, potentially. Some maybe not. Very intelligent people, there just comes a point your head can only be so big. And you want to have better developed other regions of the brain. They're going to be crowding out that prefrontal cortex. And they're going to be aggressive and they're going to be all over the place. Look at someone like Ted K. Did he have good prefrontal cortex function? Probably not. Probably not at all. You know, very smart people are known. It's a stereotype, but it's also like a known thing if you study the way people are, is that they can be very uncomfortable, very disagreeable, and quite impulsive and things like that, and yet be intelligent. It's not a very well-liked phenotype, but it is a phenotype that is essential to Western civilization. It's the whole Edward Dutton and something of Minnie, Michael Woodley of Minnie, they have a whole thing about that. They talk about the sort of psychopathic genius phenotype, and obviously those genes float around, and then when they get combined, you get this sort of person who can be like an extreme criminal, or can also, if they're very smart and very driven, and perhaps they have a lack of trauma or something like that, they can then become this, very high-performing, innovative sort of person that drives civilization forward with just extreme endeavors, like new innovative endeavors and scientific endeavors. And it's not something you find a lot in other cultures, because a lot of cultures, like East Asian culture, for example, they have a low tolerance for antisocial behavior, which is why they probably have a very good prefrontal cortex. And of course, they have good cognitive function otherwise as well. But there really are cultures, like, I think, of most of all, Anglo culture, most of all, and perhaps German and Polish as well. And they have a high tolerance for odd, autistic, psychopathic, antisocial, disagreeable, impulsive, quirky behavior that cultures like, and I love contrasting it with East Asia because it really is the perfect contrast. They do not tolerate it, and so they don't get the extreme, innovative, out there kind of genius types that in the West, at least historically, we got. I don't know. These areas play significant roles in language processing. The areas are not only associated with general intelligence, what does that even mean? These areas are not only associated with general intelligence. Are you saying that general intelligence, like stuff you measure when you measure intelligence, is in the prefrontal cortex? Because I really don't think it is. I really don't think it is, and that's the case I was trying to make here. It's associated with general intelligence, yeah, so is being tall. You're just going to measure someone's like femur bones and say, oh, well, taller people are more intelligent, so therefore we're just going to measure your leg bones, and that's associated with general intelligence. Yeah, it's associated, but no one's going to argue that the bone of your leg is producing intelligence and that they're somehow sending signals up and out of your mouth. It's ridiculous. That's not where intelligence is in the brain. But also critical for speech production, comprehension, and overall language development. Okay, cool. Understanding the neurological basis for these connections helps us appreciate how IQ and language are interlinked. But it's always like saying, oh yeah, we've got to understand this, we've got to understand, but she's not actually adding to your understanding. In fact, the things she's saying are so misleading that you come out really not understanding. You just know it. You're just learning what. You can read this whole article and just learn a few words. Oh, Broca's area, cool. Oh, prefrontal cortex, cool. It's this very midwit. It's just so midwit, this whole thing here. You're just learning a few fancy words. Oh, speech production. Oh, language development. It's just these terms thrown together without really. I could rewrite this article without any of these fancy words and make it actually make sense, and it would be like a paragraph, okay? And that would change the whole content, of course, as well. Understanding, okay. So we don't understand because you haven't taught us anything, okay? It's not even mentioning studies. Oh, there's a study where this is linked to that. Oh, people who are damaged in this brain region are really bad at that. It's all good. You can, I guess this is not the scope of this article, and I understand, but that would at least be kind of cool, Impact of language skills and cognitive development. Language skills contribute to cognitive development by enhancing the ability to formulate and articulate thoughts. No, it does not. Once again, they're just claiming this with no reference, nothing. What are you talking about? Language skills is something you've developed. You've developed the ability to speak, and that's what helps you articulate thoughts. That doesn't make sense. That's like saying walking upstairs really helps you walk upstairs. What? What are you talking about? Oh yeah, the ability to walk upstairs is really important for the ability to walk upstairs. You're saying that one equals the other. It's a complete circular argument. What are you talking about? This is so stupid. Listen to this again. Language skills contribute to cognitive development by enhancing the ability to formulate and articulate thoughts. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense. Engage in complex reasoning. Once again, no. Just no. Just no. It just makes no sense. People who are extremely verbal, extremely fluent, and are often not good at complex reasoning at all. Because there is just a competition between brain regions as well. Yes, people who are better at one thing are usually better at the other thing as well. There is such a thing as general intelligence that underlies all things. But also there is a degree of crowding out. You can't be good at everything. Your brain's just going to explode. It's not going to fit in your skull. And interact efficiently within social contexts. Once again, we're going in circles. If you're good with language skills, that means you can formulate and articulate thoughts and interact efficient. What are you even saying? What are you even saying here? Proficient language skills can expand cognitive flexibility. Where's the evidence for that? You're going to learn more language and then you become more cognitively flexible, or you're already cognitively more flexible and therefore you have more proficient language skills? What are you even talking about? Who doesn't have proficient language skills by the time they're like 6 or 7 years old? What are you even talking about? You could drive to any house down the street. I could go to the local school. I could go to like the worst socioeconomic school in my whole area and all those kids would speak really well. What are you talking about? Enabling individuals to better handle abstract concepts and diverse perspectives. Therefore, potentially increasing IQ scores. And I think this sentence might be like the worst of the entire article. What is even being said here? Are you saying you can make people have better language skills and that will increase their IQ scores? Or you just improve? Here's the thing. You could probably drill like a 8, 9, 10-year-old kid and be like over and over again, no, it's like this, not like that, like this. Remember, the word for that is that. Remember, this is the conditional, like we use it like this. You can probably do that and then they're going to perform better on a IQ test only if it involves exactly those questions. Only it involves exactly that. The same way you could probably train them to perform better on any part of the IQ test, as long as you just drill them over and over and over again on that particular part. But then the IQ test is no longer really measuring what it's supposed to be measuring, which is underlying intelligence. Because you're getting the child to perform better and better and better on a certain measure through training. Well, now it's no longer just cognitive, just underlying natural cognitive functioning that's letting me figure it out. The IQ test is meant to be like blind. It's meant to be like, oh, I've never seen this question before. Oh, interesting. How do I do? And then you're actually measuring against the other person who's also doing it. Some kid in Africa, they give him IQ test. You're meant to be measuring against that person in a fair way. You're going to be like going over and over and over again the same questions, the same type of thing until they're going to perform better. You're no longer measuring anything. You can, yeah, I'm sure you can get an 85 IQ kid to perform at a 95 IQ level. But as soon as you give them a different task, that's not exactly what you drilled into them and spent hours drilling into their head. As soon as you put them in front of a slightly different life situation, they're going to be back to performing at an 85 IQ level. The same with anyone. You could train me up on a certain topic to give like 130 IQ answers. I'm not 130 IQ and I'm never going to act like a 130 IQ person, because it's like everything in your life, every single thing, like when you go shopping, when you're counting your money, when you're thinking about your career, when you're tying your shoelaces, like if you're 130 IQ, you're going to be thinking about that all completely differently. You're thinking about time differently. You're planning into the future differently. You're saving money differently. You're investing differently. You're raising your children differently. You have a whole different approach to every part of life. And just educating, oh, look, we've increased this child's vocabulary. The child now knows a little bit of more vocabulary, or knows a little like tidbits out of history. Do you think it's going to change the approach that they have to whether they maintain their car, whether they maintain hygiene with their children, whether they do family planning or not, like whether they go to the dentist often enough? Like, you really think you can affect things that are actually going to affect your life outcomes? It's ridiculous. The whole enterprise, the whole idea is just, how can we fake things? It's all bureaucracy. How can we fake more things on paper, make everything look better on paper, and get more funding for it? That's what this is. This is not actually, how do we actually improve, let's say, disadvantaged, socioeconomically depressed, something third world, something like that, children. How do we actually improve their lives? That's a completely different conversation. How do we actually improve that? Because I'm telling you, you could probably increase IQ scores, actual underlying intelligence, and by just having better nutrition and more exercise, depending obviously how much exercise the child's getting. That's probably your best bet at increasing cognitive function. And then all this crap wouldn't be necessary. The role of education and environment. Because yeah, I just have to stress this. The idea that you can increase IQ scores by somehow forcing language skills into the child is completely preposterous. The role of education and environment. Yeah. Education and environmental factors significantly influence development of both IQ and language skills. Okay. Yeah, what are you trying to say here? Environmental factors like being starved and neglected as a baby is going to affect someone's IQ and language. Like, yeah, like not being spoken to because you're being put in front of a screen for 6 hours a day from the time you're 1 is going to affect your language skills. Yeah, it's going to affect your language skills. Like, there are really significant issues, and I don't mean to downplay any of that stuff. This is where you really make an impact on a child's life. Nutrition, early childhood, infancy, early childhood, nutrition, continuous, good, high quality nutrition, and normal interaction, touching objects, feeling, crawling, not just being strapped into a car seat for hours a day. You know, developing proper motor functions. You know how much that stimulates the brain? Just crawling around. Oh, that's why I brought the toys. Oh, I feel something. The brain is modeling that. Oh, what does it taste like? Oh, all day long. A little child, they'll do that just naturally. Just put them down. They'll just be feeling objects, be feeling all day. Oh, the next thing. Oh, a little child like 6 months old will just hold on to an object and just feel it. And then they'll like put their head on it and then lift their head, and just figuring out dimensions and objects. And it's beautiful. And those are not linguistic thoughts. It's had nothing to do with language. If you just sat that kid in your lap and forced it to read like more and more books, could you accelerate language learning? I'm sure you could, but you would be taking away all this motor development and all these skills. so much more important. The language can always come later because the language has to express something. And if you have, a disordered development in other ways, even if you're pushing that language development early, well, what's the point? What are you going to express later in life? The physical development needs to come first, especially for boys. Of course, a lot of time girls and boys sometimes also are very verbally inclined from a young age. That's great. Let them have fun with it. Let them lead it. Let them lead. They will ask for books. Don't put them on screens. They will ask for books. They will ask for songs. They will love it and enjoy it and just lean into that. The brain is telling them, I want more of this. Oh, I want more of that. So just saying environmental factors just reduces this whole statement. Just it's so senseless. Like, yeah, okay. And like I said, the most impact is going to be in very early childhood, which is where a lot of this education stuff is not even going to touch the child. This is way before education. Quality education, rich linguistic environments, and exposure to varied vocabulary can enhance cognitive development, leading to higher IQ levels. Not true, okay? It's not true. We know this stuff is not true. We actually know this. It should be criminal to go out and say this stuff. You're just digging the government for money. This is ridiculous. We know that when people are persecuted, when they're displaced, if they come from a good family, they will eventually find themselves in a good economic position again. We saw this over and over again. Soviet Union, we saw this. Korean people, absolute horrific experiences, war, displacement, orphan, seeing people just being, blown up, killed, horrific. And they ended up best performers. They went to the US and ended up the best performers in their school because they have high IQ. Okay? It's not the early experience and childhood necessarily, although I am saying, nutrition, exercise, and just normal sensory input, that's probably some of the most important things. And of course you need linguistic input. I'm not saying that. It's so pathetic to come here and say a rich linguistic environment leads to higher IQ. No. Higher IQ families are going to have a more rich linguistic environment. Why? Because they're constantly going to be talking about things and expressing things. They're going to be communicating more. There's going to be more talking in the family because it's a reflection of the high IQ of the family. I'm not saying you can't hurry up a child's language development by giving it a very rich, constant talking environment, but that's also not going to be what every child needs. It could be really misguiding them as well. I think we've got to be careful of this. Same with the exposure to varied vocabulary. And one thing that's not even mentioned here, which there are studies to support that, there's that, if you have lots of books in your home, your child will develop more vocabulary and things like that. It's like, yeah, once again, who has lots of books in their home? High IQ parents. What are we measuring here? You have to do adoption studies. You have to do the whole, they was twins and they were adopted, or like a child, we know the socioeconomic background of its biological parents. It was adopted at birth. It was raised in this sort of family. And of course, we see that they do enhance development. But then as soon as they start making their own choices in life, they actually end up much, much, much closer to the socioeconomic level of their parents. So this is just ridiculous to say this. We know this stuff. Twin studies, look it up. It exists. Conversely, environments that lack these resources may hinder cognitive and language development, illustrating the critical role of nurture alongside nature. But I'm not saying I'm against nurture. It's just a child that is more intelligent and has a trajectory to be more intelligent, like biologically speaking, is going to need more nurture as well, right? There's going to have a greater need for more input. And it will probably go looking for that input as well. It will pick up more books and read more things and be more interested and maybe ask for more stories. Of course, every human brain is expecting social input, warmth, love, care, nurture, food. It's all expecting that. But the extent to which it requires that is going to vary between people. It's like maybe a Dutch kid is going to expect more calories than a Vietnamese kid. A Vietnamese kid's probably going to be eating fewer calories and to be developing fine than a Dutch kid. you know, that sort of thing. Or fat, like an Eskimo is probably going to want to eat a lot more fat than a Japanese person, just because their ancestral diets are different and their bodies expect different things because they can convert different nutrients differently. Same thing, basically. Socioeconomic influences. Socioeconomic status plays a pivotal role in the availability of educational and cognitive resources. Yes, not sure what they mean by cognitive resources. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Are you saying people of higher socioeconomic status are smarter? Are you saying the people that they're around are smarter? Is that what you mean by that? Impacting, I genuinely don't know. Impacting both language development and IQ. Yes, but it's mostly genetic. It's mostly through the genetics that it's influencing that. Access to books, educational programs, and intellectually stimulating activities often correlates with higher IQ and better language skills. Yes, but once again, how much of that is because you're from intelligent families? The same thing I've just been saying. I'm not going to say it over and over again. Underscoring the importance of addressing educational disparities. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. You know, maybe people should just be educated differently according to their own preferences and needs. You know, honestly, I'm not saying force something upon a child, but a boy from a working class family perhaps should be able to choose to do a lot more hands-on activities that are still gonna, like, you're telling me you don't need intelligence to do like fishing, like you got all these different things, you got all the vocabulary around that topic. I wouldn't even know. I don't know all these things. Hunting, like bows and arrows and guns, and like there's so many things. And I'm not really the first person to be like a men's rights activist. I'm not trying to sound like that, but I'm just being real here. All this, oh, we need words and grammar and rich language. Like, yeah, but you know, people will learn language when they're doing activities. Like, you're telling me if you're taking apart computers, you're not going to learn all the different names or all the different parts. And oh, I'm going to sound smarter than that guy by knowing what this particular cable is called. Oh, the motherboard. Oh, the USB, whatever. All these words. Like, of course, people learn by doing stuff. They learn by watching. They're talking to each other. Like, just let people live. That's education. Just get people off screens and stupid, dumbed down media, that's for sure. Just let people live and do their hobbies. Give people a bit of a struggle. Make kids earn a little bit of money. Let them run like a lemonade stand and go fishing, and see how much they will learn. They will learn so much. And that's not going to exclude children of different temperaments, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that could actually be really beneficial to people, to children who don't have a very high cognitive ability or a very high interest in, you know, essays and books and stories. It's just not every child's cup of tea. And I think that's totally fine. I think it's beyond fine. You don't want just a bunch of bookish kids everywhere. It's going to be such a useless society. You want to have like the car mechanic who just knows everything about cars and like has fixed like a million different machines, and you want those sort of people in society. You don't want to overeducate every child all the way up to 18 and be like, oh well, now go do what you want. Like, well, I want to be a car mechanic, but now I'm useless. Now I feel useless, and you're losing a lot of mental flexibility in those years that could be used to specialize into something, whatever that is. Cultural factors also shape how language and intelligence are developed and valued. Different cultures emphasize various aspects of intelligence and linguistic abilities, which can affect the development of IQ and language skills. What? What do you even say? Is this like a low-key, like soft way of saying different cultures around the world have different IQ and different language skills, and different parts of intelligence are more pronounced in different populations? Like, it's low-key kind of like a right-wing discourse, but it's phrased in a way that's like, oh, it's because they value it. Oh yeah, if you take like a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid and you're like, oh yeah, our culture really values like, you know, spatial thinking. They're gonna be like, oh, and then they're gonna develop spatial. Like, really? You think that's how intelligence works? Doesn't make any sense. Practical implications for teaching and learning. Recognizing the interplay between IQ and language has significant implications for educational practices. Tailoring teaching methods to integrate language development with cognitive skills, skill enhancement can foster more holistic educational outcomes. I still think my idea is better of just doing a range of practical things. Kids can't do stuff anymore. Kids don't know how to do dishes. I knew this lady and she worked in schools. She did they have like, is it home, what is it called? It's like practical kitchen kind of stuff. They learn like cooking and things like that. These kids can't even wash dishes. These kids can't even chop a vegetable. Like, you're telling me taking like an onion and thinking, okay, what's the best way to chop this onion? It has layers, right? Getting the layers. You're telling me that doesn't exercise your spatial thinking and awareness and like your hand-to-eye coordination? Like, come on. Just cook, just do things. And I'm not saying don't do more like intellectual sort of things and don't listen to stories, but that could be on the side. Educators can employ strategies that promote both verbal and non-verbal intelligence. That's where I agree. Thereby supporting comprehensive intellectual growth, 100%. That's where I agree. The intricate relationship between IQ and language proficiency is a testament to the complexity of human intelligence. Yeah, maybe it's not that complex, honestly. By further exploring this connection, we can enhance educational methods, addressing cognitive disparities. Kind of based. Cognitive disparities. Okay. And foster environments that promote both linguistic and intellectual development. This detailed examination, it was not a detailed examination actually at all. Not only broadens our understanding, no, it doesn't, thank you. Don't tell me that you've just broadened my understanding. Like, shut up. That is so arrogant. Don't write this shit and then tell me that it's a detailed examination that broadens our understanding. No, this is like, could you have just used an AI to write this? Would have been so much better. This is like out of like year 10 in high school. What are you talking about? This is shit. How is this stuff being published? Oh, gosh. Anyway. There's no more really being said. This is the lady. Let's have a look. And she talks all about intelligence. She should not be talking about intelligence. Is this a DEI hire? Is this... I can't zoom in. Is this lady a DEI? Today you can see my cursor, by the way. Other days you can't. Oh my goodness. So much stuff about the brain and IQ. Oh, maybe they deemed her like a safe. Oh, you're a safe person. You can talk about this topic. We wouldn't let like an actually intelligent like white male talking about this stuff. That would be racist and unsafe. Maybe that's like the thinking behind this. This is crazy. This is crazy. You shouldn't be hiring people like that to write about these topics. No good. All right. There wasn't as many linguistic concepts as I would have liked in that, because she actually didn't talk. Did you notice she didn't actually talk much about linguistics? Like I didn't have to go into linguistics and like explain things with my little toy things. I was gonna be like, oh yeah, objects and abstraction. Like I was gonna go more into it, but her article doesn't really even talk about linguistics, which is crazy. Doesn't really talk about anything about language. Was there even any like concepts of language? Was there even anything about like grammar or tense? Or I don't think there was really anything. It just tells you the level of article. We'll have to get better ones. We will get better articles to review. Okay. Then we have a few other things, not much. Anish Munka talks about, there's a Chinese biologist named Hongmei Wang who's trying to space out women's cycles, so women's periods as well, to make them lose fewer eggs so that they can have like extra time to have babies, so they'll run out of eggs more slowly. The eggs will still age though, that's why I'm unsure. It doesn't address this. Are we good just having like more aged eggs? Are we safe doing that? For most of human history, women have had about 100 periods in their lifetimes. Today, women have over 400. The Chinese biologist named Hongmei Wang thinks that the gap is part of why women run out of eggs decades earlier than they have to. Wang is 52. She runs a lab at the Institute of Zoology. So maybe she's got a personal interest in this. The Institute of Zoology in Beijing. Okay. That studies the cellular machinery of fertility. Her idea is simple. I'm going to put it on the screen so you can see it. Bleed 4 times a year instead of 12. Save eggs. Extend the fertile window. Really, it's not about the bleeding. It's about the ovulation, isn't it? Mouse data so far backs her up. Before birth control, women were pregnant or breastfeeding through most of their fertile years. And both pause periods. Yeah, I've always thought about this. I've heard this so vaguely and so rarely is this ever discussed. But it's like, if you're pregnant, aren't you skipping pregnant and then breastfeeding? Let's say you skip 9 periods and then maybe you skip another 9. So 9 periods for pregnancy and then maybe you skip another 9 for breastfeeding. That would be pretty normal, I think. Pretty average, probably. You're talking about 18 times you don't ovulate. So, and don't with every cycle, multiple eggs will ripen. So aren't you saving like, I have no idea. It could be like 20, 30, 40. How many eggs are we not ovulating just for having one child? So I wonder about that. And they do say if you have children, it's easier for you to conceive later on, but there could be other factors that influence that. But perhaps this is the factor that influences that. About 100 cycles in a lifetime, which is nuts because that's not that many. That's really not that many. That's like, so 100 is 10 times 10. And a year would have about 10 periods, maybe a little bit more. So we're talking about a woman would have about 10 years. So from about 15 to 45. So in that 30 years of her fertile life, maybe some women might get periods till 50. I actually don't really know. Only 10 of the whole 10 years of the whole fertile period would they actually be having periods. Now with later marriages, fewer kids and longer lives, the number sits above 400. Each cycle uses up eggs. Run out, menopause starts. So it's like your egg reserve gets low, so you start menopause. That's nuts. So maybe because I've had a few children, maybe I'll start menopause later because I have more egg reserve. I just don't know if it's true. I just want to know. Like that would be really cool. Or bad, I don't know. Good, I guess. That's cycle hypothesis is one of 3 threads in her lab. The second was the 2024 paper in the journal Cell Discovery. Her team grew lab stem cells, named them M cells, and injected them into the ovaries of old monkeys past their fertile years. Damage in the tissue healed. Hormones came back. One treated monkey gave birth to a healthy baby. That's actually crazy. They tried it on 63 women whose ovaries had quit decades early, a condition called premature ovarian failure. 4 had healthy children. This is a big deal, right? The team patented the technique and licensed it to a private firm. The third project is in Barcelona. Wang is partnering with biologist Alfonso Martinez Arias to grow fake human embryos from stem cells. Fake human embryos. Pardon me. It is so cold. Almost every country bans growing real ones in labs past 14 days. The window from day 14 to day 28 is when the body's basic blueprint forms, the layers that turn into brain, heart, and bone. Almost everything we know about it comes from animals because the human version have been off limits in labs for decades. The fake embryos are how Wang plans to look inside. She does not oversell any of it. When we stop ovulation, we save more eggs, but we also stop the body from making estrogen, and that molecule is absolutely vital for health. Oh, okay, she told El Pais. Years of low estrogen weakens bones and wears down the heart. She is now working out how to keep the eggs without paying that price. Well, that's really interesting and obviously really, really important for so many countries around the world and so many people around the world. But there is this one problem that is definitely not mentioned here, and that is generational length is really going to affect your population. And by your population, you could talk about your family, your immediate family, your extended family, your town, your culture, your religion. I don't really care on what level this is going to apply either way. And it's that if your generational length is really long, you've got to almost think of it as like they're your grandkids. Obviously, they might be your biological children that you bear, but if you're having a child at 45, there are other women having children and their children are having children when they're 45. So their grandchildren are born at 45. So if they're having 2 children at 20 and then at 40, each one of their children has 2 children, they're already dealing with a population that's 2 parents, 2 children, and then 4 grandchildren. And so you can imagine their group just growing, whereas the not lower fertility but slower fertility is going to be 2 parents and then 2 children in the same time span, which I'm pretty sure is like 4 fewer people. So we're already half. This is only like just starting, and like this is the hypothetical scenario here. I hope you can understand hypotheticals, audience. The hypothetical scenario has just started. It's just started. We're in the first generation, and one group already is double of what the other group is. And that's imagining that people who have children later have the same number as children as people who have children younger, which is not the case. People who have children younger also have more children. So the woman who's having children at 20 is also going to have probably more children down the line as well. So that group is just going to grow so much more rapidly than the group that has a generational length of like over 40 years. Or even if it's 35 years, even if it's 40 years, you've got to always compare that to other groups if you're talking about human demographics and dynamics and like what percentage of the population you're going to be. And you might not care about that. That's totally fine, obviously. But just the trajectory, how many fighting age males are you going to have? How many reproductive age females are you going to have at any given time? It's probably not going to put much of a dent in it. Just saying, all women can have a higher fertility. Like rather than having a fertility of 1, they're now going to have a fertility of 2. Yeah, but if it's later in life, you're kind of erasing the benefit of that. I'm not saying the personal, emotional benefit to you or something like that. I'm saying in terms of the group more widely. All right, let's see what else we've got. Brett Weinstein says, when I first saw the hantavirus story, I thought, given it's a single-stranded RNA virus, ivermectin is likely to work because IVM, which I think means ivermectin, is effective with RNA viruses generally. Look at what happened when I pursued it with Claude. It clammed up for safety reasons. Buckle up. So he shows what he was talking to Claude. So that's Brett Weinstein. Does ivermectin work on negative sense RNA viruses? It timed out. Okay, so yeah, people are annoyed, worried about this whole hantavirus thing. I don't really like to cover it because the last thing I want to do is be like spreading fear and like be part of this kind of mechanism of clickbaity fear spreading about something that perhaps might really not be dangerous. Let's just be a little bit cautious. I do think that there is a massive push to market. I mean, at the very least, there is a big desire and a push to market these mRNA vaccines. I mean, we're really massively incentivizing people to mess with viruses if they can make so much money off these vaccines. Yeah, I'm just saying. A guy went to Bulgaria to prove it's a lie that they're racist and didn't find one who told him it's false. So I have no idea about Bulgaria. Let's see what's going on in Bulgaria.
People of Bulgaria, if they really agree with that statement. On a scale of 1 to 10, how racist are you?
Middle. Yeah, I would say the same.
Well, most people are at 0, so technically you are kind of racist.
Great.
Would you ever live in an apartment full of black people?
No, that's like a refugee camp.
Why are you racist?
My grandfather was racist. My father is racist. I'm racist. It's in my DNA.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how racist are you?
11.
What would you say to all the immigrants?
Get out. Go to Asia. Go through Asia. You have a country. You have own country. Fight for your country. This is your country. This is my country. You're not welcome here.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for that. Yeah, I'm a racist. He is racist too.
Yellow people are shit, and also like black people are shit.
Yellow people. Who are the yellow people?
The Asians.
Would you let a black person date your children?
No,
Why?
because of the bloodline to be continued white.
It's interesting always to see who sees themselves as white. I guess it really comes down to a skin color thing for most people, because a lot of Western Europeans would not see Bulgarians as white, but it's, you know, it's cool, and they have a pride, and they have a way, just a very casual, it's so casual, it's so easy, like, Western Europeans, especially Northwestern Europeans, like internally hemorrhaging. But I guess there's at having to say anything like that, even if they feel that way, they would really, 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 really struggle to say it. But I guess it's just generally a politeness, and I don't think it's just around that topic. Actually, it's around a lot of things. And we're just so polite. We're so like, oh, I don't want to step on your toes. Like, even if you feel slightly uncomfortable talking about something, I'm like not going to mention it. And this is just sort of what makes Anglo society so nice, but really hard to sustain in a globalizing world. It's well past time for a total tick death. What's going on with the ticks? We've got the hantavirus and the ticks at the same time. It's overwhelming. Half of farmers in Martha's Vineyard may have alpha-gal, tick-borne red meat allergy. Charlie Gronquist, a chef at sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this, farm, said he's worked hard to find ways to eliminate alpha-gal allergens from the meals he cooks for the farm staff and the island community. He estimates that around half of the farms he regularly cooks for have alpha-gal. So it's this tick-borne illness. Really, it's terrifying. It's horrific. You become allergic to red meat and certain animal products. Terrifying. Terrifying. I would never want that to happen to me. Ever, ever. Let's hope that, and yeah, obviously there are all these conspiracy theories around this being spread on purpose, and like ticks being released near cattle farms, because apparently once the tick bites a cow, the meat will actually transfer this to people who eat the meat. So I'm really hoping that this does not become like a widespread thing. That would suck. That would be horrific. It must be a way of killing ticks, right? Apparently Michael Jackson stole all his dance moves from a white guy called Bob Fosse in The Little Prince, a movie from 1974. This is crazy. I didn't know this. So here's the dance, which you would think is Michael Jackson, but it's not. Very creepy. Very creepy. Like Slender Man vibes. With this creepy little girl in a like Victorian dress or something. What do you even call this? I don't even know names for this. Bent knee, like hunched, like old man, lanky. It's interesting. That is so Michael Jackson though, like the leg, like very specifically. The hat. Wow. The kicks, isn't that exactly what Michael Jackson does with the like kick? It's like kind of sassy. This is a strange combination of traits. Like it's kind of like sneaky and like hand rubbing and like sassy leg kicks. Very odd. And with the addition of the little child, is very creepy. Very creepy. Why are you dancing in front of a child like that with your hat? Ugh. That's not how you entertain a child. This is not normal. Is this what drew Michael Jackson? He's like, yeah, I want to dance like this in front of children. Like, I mean, I've defended like Michael Jackson in the past, and I've seen like interesting content where I would feel more defensive about him, but really, I mean, really, maybe he was just a creep. Maybe he was just a creep. It sucks. Oh, that's it. Oh. Sorry, the cold weather is like getting to me a bit. What do people say? What do people say? Like, share, subscribe, comment. If you subscribe, I'm pretty sure you can get like notifications if I'm gonna go live. I'm planning on going live around 8:30, probably closer to 9 p.m. most days. And that might very well turn into 3 or 4 times a week. It just sort of depends. Depends what's happening. Depends if there's some emergencies, some kids vomiting, something like that. Or just illness, something like that. Yeah. So do that if you like the content. Try to keep on top of it. I've got a Telegram. I've got all my social media stuff. You should see it somewhere. If you click around, you should be able to see in the description and things like that how to follow me. Right, I can barely breathe. Good night, everyone.